This conference will now be recorded.
Excellent. Welcome aboard, everybody.
Hey, Chris.
Yes. Let's see if that worked. Am I able to?
There you go. I think. No.
Then,
You might want to restart the recording once you get the
yes.
presentation up.
Yes,
Okay.
do. Okay.
This conference will now be recorded.
Fantastic. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for your patience suffering through our minor technical glitches, getting us all into the right room and getting this started. We need to get this guy out of the way so you're seeing the slides instead of the GoToMeeting controls. And my name's ChrisTaylor. I am the founding executive director for the Media and Entertainment Center's ISAC, an Information Sharing and Analysis Center. And what I wanted to do for today's short presentation is just kind of give you an overview of what an ISAC does, how they work, who they're here to support, et cetera, what we do with our lives over here at this crazy thing that I am. So we're, what we've got is, as an ISAC, the concept of an ISAC has existed for about 22 years now. It was created with an executive order signed by Clinton back in the 90s that created the concept of an information sharing capability because cybersecurity and threat awareness was becoming more and more of a concern. The federal government, via vehicles such as the NSA and the FBI and then DHS didn't exist, but once DHS was created, there's another awesome vehicle of information about how to secure your own enterprises, both the computers and the physical, and just the holistic how to secure your business. Is all this great threat information is sitting in these repositories inside the federal government, and there was not really a good vehicle to get that information out of the federal government out to the populace. And the government realized that if they tried to just go direct to the people, they had a scale problem. They needed to create a middleman that would sit in the middle and amplify the message for them so that they didn't have to talk to a couple of 100,000 companies. They wanted to talk to a double-digit number of entities and then have that image or that messaging amplified back out to an entire sector. So what they came up with was the concept of an ISAC, and so it spawned out of the federal government's desire to be able to analyze and feed dissemination of risk and threat information. And the original goal for the ISAC was to be able to pull information out of the federal government and then broadcast it out to the sector that the ISAC supports. And they created an ISAC for each of the, for a sector. So the financial sector has an ISAC. So all of the banks and the mortgage companies and the companies like Morgan Stanley, et cetera, all sit in a financial sector ISAC. All of the trucking companies and the DHL and UPS and FedEx all sit in a transportation ISAC. There's literally an ISAC for practically every sector out there. There is a convention amongst the sectors that the term ISAC is reserved for critical infrastructure, and inside DHS they have a Secure the Nation plan where they have outlined what the government considers critical. If these functions go offline, it severely impacts the entire operation of the government and the populace as a whole. So the government has identified what they consider critical infrastructure, such as our power grid, our water distribution, which are supported in respectively by the Energy ISAC and the Water ISAC. And amongst them, they do have media and entertainment listed as critical infrastructure. And the entertainment side arguably isn't, because from a criticality standpoint, if nobody gets to see Tenet this summer, the big blockbuster that Warner Brothers is supposed to be putting out and has pushed back at least 4 times now, and it's seriously starting to mess with my jive. If we don't get to see that movie, nobody's going to die. But the media half of media and entertainment also includes the broadcast news. So your ability to turn on your TV or your radio or go to the internet and read ABC News, MSNBC, Fox News, etc. That's the media side of media and entertainment. And that is vital messaging. That's how the populace gets informed about issues. So that is definitely falls into that category of critical infrastructure. So I support both sides of media and entertainment because they're generally owned by the same companies. ABC and Disney are the same company. NBC and Universal, the movie studio, are the same company. All the way down the line, with practically all of the entertainment companies also handle the more critical, more newsy side of the sector as well. So because they're commingled so much, we end up commingling them inside of our sector, and then we move out. So then my membership, I am member driven. I'm a nonprofit organization. I report up to a board of directors that is voted in, and the seats rotate periodically, and all my member companies basically provide the governance and the drive for how I operate, and then I run the operations for actually getting the operations done. I am a member of the National Council of ISACs. There's approximately 30 of us. I've mentioned a couple already. The FS ISAC for the financial sector, the water, energy, the health ISAC for all of the hospitals. You can go to the National Council of ISAC's website and see a member directory that lists what all of them are. Those are all the critical infrastructure groups. There is also a related concept that is called an ISAO. And this is by convention. There's no law. We don't go throwing people in jail if they get it wrong. But generally speaking, an ISAC is for critical infrastructure, and ISAO is for everyone else. So there's the LA Cyber Lab here in Los Angeles, hosted and run by the mayor of LA. Out of his office, there is a regional ISAO called the LA Cyber Lab, and they do basically the same thing we do. They just have a different focus on who would be a member. And there's other groups that are ISAOs, like there's a sports ISAO that is all of the NFL teams and the soccer teams and basketball teams all join into an ISAO, but they're not considered critical infrastructure, so we refer to them as an ISAO instead of an ISAC. I've spent way too much time belaboring that point, so we'll move on from it. But the National Council of ISACs is specifically for the critical infrastructure groups. If you sign up to be a member, that's the first checkbox. The first gate you have to clear to join them is you have to prove that you're critical infrastructure. And then we do information sharing back and forth between all of the ISACs, and then from the federal government down to us through the National Council is how that works. So DHS, the FBI, the NSA, and a handful of other organizations will feed information into the National Council. It gets distributed to the 29 ISACs, and then when I receive it, I redistribute it to the hundreds of members that I have that are all the different media companies that have signed up to be one of my members. The kind of data that we are putting out is vulnerability announcements. I wrote 2 vulnerability announcements today. For an example, there is a critical vulnerability in Android that Google just released an announcement on this morning. So we put out a vulnerability announcement this morning to our members to let them know you should update your phones, because that's a serious remote code execute vulnerability that's currently out there. So we do a lot of vulnerability announcements like that across the board. Anything we think will affect any of the companies in our sector, we'll put those out. We also publish reports that are more industry specific. especially with regard to the film and print side. There's a lot of piracy issues that come up as intellectual property protection concepts that big swaths of our entertainment sector are worried about. So we have an entire section of our ISAC dedicated to tracking anti-piracy issues and seeing where the pirates sharing data, cataloging all the IOCs for what are the IP addresses and what other types of indicators would allow us to identify bad guys when they're trying to steal information from our intellectual property from one of our members. And then we also do, in addition to the focus stuff, we do like tracking APT threats, keeping an eye on just the threat landscape that's out there, and knowing who all the different APT groups are, who are all the different cybercrime groups, who's propagating out ransomware, what are the indicators that would let you know that you have ransomware, and then we try and share that tactical data down with our members, and then they can update their blocking rules in their firewalls or their spam filters or on their endpoint security devices in order to, depending on what the indicator is, they'll pick the appropriate tool and put in some kind of block. And then the goal is for them to start getting more proactive with their security because we're feeding them better information in order to protect themselves. Inside the ISAC, we are split into 3 different groups. The first here, the Threat Intel Fusion Center, is sort of the tactical arm. That's all the stuff that I was just describing. It comes out of our Fusion Center, and that's where we're tracking all the different threats and we're producing all the alerts. This is generally more one-shot tactical data where I hear Android has a vulnerability and I fire an alert out. I hear there's a new ransomware family out there. Here's all the MD5s. Here's all the domain names and IP addresses associated with the command and control. Whatever other indicators we can glean from it, we put it into an alert and send that out to our members. The research and analysis group is more of the strategic long-term arm. It's the same group of people, it's just the focus shifts. And what they do is they start with the data that we're producing, plus then they pull in additional data as necessary and do more trending analysis and longer term visionary stuff. So kind of like the Verizon breach report you see every year, we produce a similar annual report that is focused on media company threats. So whereas the Verizon breach report is a little more generic and crosses multiple sectors, we put out something similar to that, but it's focused specifically on what we think media and entertainment companies care about. And then those are the trends and the things that you need to worry about. Also out of this research and analysis group, we do a lot of collecting, collating, and disseminating like best practices documents for security controls or incident response playbooks and things of that nature. We're curating a collection of that kind of data as well that's available to our members if they need a template to start from. And the third arm that we do inside of the ISAC is our training and outreach arm. And inside training and outreach, we do exactly what I'm doing right now. We provide outreach to companies where we do webinars, we do brown bag luncheons, we try to host in-person meetings until that got kiboshed by this pandemic. And it's a lot of us going into companies and teaching them about the threat landscape or other types of security topics as they come up. If one of our members wants a guest speaker for an annual IA training in order to make it a little more interesting, I'll come in as a guest speaker. So that's kind of what our training and outreach arm does. To give you an idea of the kind of threats that we deal with inside media and entertainment, this is slightly dated at this point because I pulled this news report from November of 2019. And as the 2019 was coming to a close and we were about to start a new decade, ZDNet put together a list of what they considered notable cybersecurity events. And just containing myself to this one news article, this single list of what they considered notable, I was able to extract out of that list almost half of the list. is media and entertainment companies were either directly involved as victims or were secondary involved for other reasons. So it does seem like, you know, media and entertainment would be as big a focus as it is, because we don't have quite the same dollar amounts sitting behind us as retail credit card breaches and such, but we do get hit rather frequently. Sony getting hit multiple times, and the Equifax breach, the Yahoo breach, etc., all affected the media and entertainment companies, and we tracked every one of those and let all of our customers know about them. And if I were to broaden myself away from this one article, this list would easily double in size of what I know was in the news that was out of our industry, but I was just trying to stress a point with a single source. To give you an idea of the threat landscape and what we're up against, this comes from an awesome site, HackMageddon.com. It's a blog run by a guy out of Spain. And this is only what's in the news, because every data point he has in his database has a source news article tied to it. So if a breach didn't make the news, it's not in his data set. And even of the breaches that make the news, it's a subset of those because somebody had to send him a tip in order to get him to add it to the database. So this is by no means conclusive, but to give you an idea of the trending, because he does a really good job of being very consistent from month to month. So it's pretty easy to build trend lines out of his data because he goes out of his way to keep it consistent, specifically so he can build trend lines. And what he has observed amongst his own data set, the 2017 numbers, he was tracking about 80 to 90 breaches per month all year. And then when he moved into 2018, it has pretty steadily increased up to about 100 breaches per month. And as he shifted into 2019, we're looking at about 140 breaches per month are being reported up to his site. If I go pull the 2020 numbers, I'm seeing a fairly consistent jump again, where the numbers are sitting up here at about the 160 to 180 mark. As every year, these attacks get more prolific, there's more of them, bad things are happening, and we're not stopping them at this point. So it is generally a growing problem, which is a good thing for us because we work in security, so we have great job security out of that. The other thing he tracks on his website is for every one of those entries in the database, he also tracks a motivation, and he breaks every one of the breaches down to one of these 4 groups. And if it is ransomware or a credit card theft or something of that nature where it is a criminally motivated, it's a bad guy trying to make money, then it's cyber crime. And what we have seen is a pretty steady, if you stick a trend line on this, you see it doing a pretty steady rise through here, although my trend line's angled wrong, but that's what I get for doing these by hand. The where this is going up every year. If I were to go back about 5 years ago, cybercrime accounted for about 2/3 of the incidents that we were tracking on the internet. Where we are now in 2020, it's better than 80%. So cybercrime is definitely dominating the threat landscape, and the espionage, where we have nation states trying to steal secrets from people, that's a very significant but considerably smaller portion of the types of breaches that we go and deal with now. In this cyber espionage section, it's, if I go back 15, 20 years ago when I first started doing cybersecurity, I would tell customers that you don't really need to worry about targeted bad guys coming after you. If you can just keep the low-hanging fruit off your network, you'll be fine, because the people who are persistent enough to get through that aren't going to spend the energy to get in. Nowadays, we have financially motivated cybercrime people that are motivated enough to get through because they'll make money by dropping ransomware or by stealing breach data out. And on the cyber espionage side, the landscape has shifted from then to now, in that previously the groups were only after government secrets. So they would go attack the Pentagon or defense contractors. Raytheon had to worry, you didn't. But where we are now, we're seeing nation state sponsored cyber attack groups actually going after the civilian sector to steal intellectual property and then hand it over to their government so that their government can have a economic advantage on the global stage, and it just kind of helps bolster their economy. So the governments are actually behind intellectual property theft in the commercial sector now. The most recent place where we have seen this is the APT groups targeting the vaccine research labs and trying to steal the research data for how the vaccines are made and how the production is getting progressing, and with the goal of them being able to produce their own vaccines instead of having to buy them from us. So this is a pretty significant threat that was tracked by the Health ISAC, and I was getting updates on that every day for the last couple of weeks, but it seems to have died off this week. And we see similar APT style attacks coming after other groups as well. It's not always intellectual property theft. Multiple times we have seen what we would throw into cyber warfare, where we have a nation state sponsored group breaking in and doing damage to the network. They don't really care about stealing data. They just care about hurting you. And that was something that used to be unheard of until about 5 years ago. The first major incidents of that popped up in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Aramco, the oil and gas company that is owned by the state of Saudi, the government said some things they didn't like about Iran. Iranian-backed government hackers broke in and burned the Saudi Aramco network to the ground. Wholesale deleted everything off of servers, left behind ransomware to encrypt everything that was left. They did massive amounts of damage. We saw the exact same playbook hit Sony 2 years later. And that, now that we've kind of set that precedent, I'm expecting us to see more and more of those types of attacks to come out that are more politically motivated, but they're less about espionage and more about damaging people. And another thing that we're seeing a lot of is in very recent news. Since about March, we've seen this massive uptick in pandemic themed threats. We're seeing a lot of phishing emails that are claiming to tell you about the latest updates, or they're trying to sell you masks, or they're trying to push you to go get more information about what the current infection rate is from a dashboard that is not real data from a government agency, but is actually a replication of that government data that's propagating malware. I'm sure you've all seen the Johns Hopkins dashboard that is tracking all the trends for the coronavirus cases and the spread. There have been multiple clones of that website that are literally just loading the Johns Hopkins website as an iframe full screen, so you think you're on Johns Hopkins site, but the rest of the page outside of that iframe is JavaScript that is breaking your browser and delivering malware. And we've identified and punted literally thousands of these fake dashboards off the internet that are attacking all of us with, never let a good crisis go to waste, right? So they're using a lot of the theme of the pandemic as a way to target people, because fear is an excellent motivator, and people are likely to be more likely to click links in phishing emails because of it. The other big change that we saw because of the pandemic is there's a lot more remote workers. So a lot of our workplaces now coming in over VPNs, connecting to SaaS cloud-based solutions. And because the people are now outside the perimeter, they have slightly less security surrounding them. Bad guys are taking advantage of that. They're shifting their attacks. Their phishing emails are changing the content to try and drive people to fake Office 365 login sites and such, specifically trying to target these remote workers as they push through. We've seen really significant upticks in a lot of the different types of attacks that take place compared to pre-pandemic and then post everybody going into lockdown, we've seen really significant upticks in the types of attacks that have been taking place because they know everybody's at home and are more vulnerable now. And gaming specifically in this report that I pulled, video games were specifically targeted because so many people are not at work, they're at home playing video games. So Verizon has seen an uptick by, I want to say it was 80% uptick in the amount of online video game playing. So the attackers have similarly seen an uptick in them trying to attack those video game players. And, which that's the side I just said. I got a sidebar that explains what I just said. And some of the services that we offer out of the ISAC is that we provide out threat intel feeds. And if you are a media entertainment company, please come see us, get this data brought into your environment. It will help you understand the threat landscape and have your tools be better tuned and be able to better defend yourselves. If you're in any other sector, I highly recommend go sign up for the LA Cyber Lab, go see the sector representative for whatever sector you do work for, because this threat intel data really will help you be more informed and be able to provide a better, a more intelligent defense. There's one of those old axioms in life that offense informs defense. These threat intel feeds are what enable you to learn what the offense is up to so that you can properly tune your defenses appropriately. Inside these threat intel feeds, what you'll generally find is you'll get access to a database of known indicators such as email addresses tied to phishing emails or IP addresses that are known to be propagating malware or domains behind those IP addresses. Depending on how the malware is written, it might be calling out to an IP or to a domain. There's easily about 40 other categories of indicator types that we track. These three are the most important, but we track a lot of others as well that are like file identifiers, like file names and MD5 hashes, etc. This enables you, by having access to this database, you can research the indicators. You have an IDS alert go off that says this potentially looks like malicious traffic trying to attack my web server. The public side, the non-you side of that session, you can look that IP address up in this database and research that indicator, and we'll be able to tell you, yeah, we've seen this attacking other websites, and then you can adjust the risk level because this is a riskier IP. You're more likely to block it. Or maybe you'll find out that it's tied to something else. And if it's tied to a big hosting company and it's thousands of domains on there, then you'll know that from this research because we've got all that cataloged in our databases. And if you can, try and take those threat intel feeds and tie them directly into your security tools so that you can automate that research. And once you get the automation of the research really solid and you feel really comfortable for it, the next step after that, you can automate the tying these threat intel feeds right into block rules on your firewalls or into your spam filters. If you take the threat indicators that are definitely positively confirmed as bad and just feed them right into your firewall and say, just block all the evil parts of the internet, you'll keep a lot of the bad off your network. Where this helps us is basically herd immunity. You've heard this a lot talking about the pandemic. So well, this is basically the cyber equivalent of herd immunity. If you know, I've got 100 members in my member base, any one of those members gets attacked and then shares the threat indicators. I don't care about the victim side. I don't necessarily need to know if the attack was successful or not, or what was attacked or what was stolen. I don't want to know any of that. I just want to know if you see an attack coming, tell me the IP address and the malware that was used and get me the threat identifiers. And then we'll share those out with the rest of the community. And so if any one of us is attacked, we bring that data in, we do put it back out as an alert to everybody else. We provide it as a machine readable feed. That feed goes right into block rules. And now the other 99 members of our community are now able to proactively go ahead and block that bad IP address that we see attacking one of our peers. And now when that bad guy moves to a new target, because every bad guy out there, they don't attack an individual victim, they go after hundreds of victims and scan the entire internet looking for whoever they can break into. So as soon as we see them once and we start blocking their infrastructure, we've been able to basically proactively defend ourselves from incoming attacks before we've ever even been attacked. And that cycle right there is how we shift from a reactionary defense to a proactive defense. One of the other things that we do out of the ISAC is publishing alerts. I talked about those at the very beginning. So far this year, this number's already outdated because just since I've created these slides last week, I've already written another dozen alerts. But we put out alerts on vulnerability announcements or ransomware families or malware families. We might do a write-up on a family, and here's all the indicators associated with it. Or if there's a notable incident where I've had threat data shared with me, we'll remove all the victim information and put together the ME-ISAC has witnessed one of our members attacked recently. Here's all the IOCs related to it. And it all gets fed back out to our members. In addition to our own internal data that's coming from our membership base, we also pull in data from all of these fine government agencies. And I am pulling data in from all 5 of the major English-speaking countries, the multiple agencies here inside the US federal government. The Department of Homeland Security has a critical infrastructure security agency. They're kind of the front for talking to the commercial sector. Most of that data funnels through CISA and then goes back out. We also get data directly from the FBI, the DOJ, and a few other US Secret Service notably provides us data as well. Sometimes these other agencies feed it to CISA and CISA gives it to us. Sometimes I get it directly from the FBI to broadcast out to my members. And just like CISA, but in these other 4 countries, they all have their own cybersecurity centers that are pumping out alerts and trending data as well. And I'll rebroadcast alerts from them out to our membership base as well. Even though the concept of an ISAC was born out of a request by the federal government here in the United States, the ISAC is not US focused. We focus on incidents going on globally. Some of my members are in Europe and Asia, and I do track data from all over the globe and feed it to people all over the globe. So it is a global operation for us. And the part I've already kind of hinted at, the whole reason why you want to have access to this kind of data. Offense informs defense. You need to understand what's going on the internet. So if you can properly understand the threats, you'll be able to have a more accurate risk calculations. Once you can have more accurate risk calculations, you can build better security controls and prioritize the security controls more accurately. And all of that leads to you creating a better informed defense and enables you to become a proactive defense. So that is the concept of an ISAC in a nutshell and the type of data that you get from an ISAC. That's all I have as far as slideshow presentation. Then I'll yield the rest of the time if you guys have questions or if you just want to talk about random topics. We are back to all of you.